Now, Shangri-La Frontier just dropped two huge bombshells. Honestly, two huge bombshells with this latest episode. The first of which is some major info regarding what seems to be the next boss we might fight before season 2 wraps up, which is basically the big octopus kraken thing in the ocean, because apparently old Rust and Mold over here actually have some info based on a quest line, and now Sunraku is going to work with them in SLF to hopefully unlock the bonus unique quest line, which would then in return relate to the actual boss fight. But I think for me, the biggest and craziest thing was the fact that they seemingly confirmed there's another player in the rabbit village. So Emule's just sitting there casually being like, damn, it's been days since I saw my pal Sunraku. Broke my heart, but you know what, it is what it is. Apparently time moves actually realistically in this game. So I guess it's like a Tamagotchi. If you don't feed it, rip your NPC pals. But her brother pops up, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. We haven't seen the brother. Turns out the brother has a connection to very clearly a player. And that's interesting because we know Emule is basically dedicated to Sunraku. Like, that's his NPC at this point. There's not going to be another Emule. But the interesting thing is that I guess because rabbits have so many siblings and stuff, that's how other players would have access. And now Sunraku, when he comes back, potentially could be interacting with another player. And that's never happened up to this point when it comes to this village. The world of SLF is opening up, and this is a damn fine video game. Now, of course, I have full live reactions over on Patreon if you want to see my full and good thought to any of this SLF greatness over there exclusively. So, very, very good final fight that we saw. Now, we don't get to... So, technically, there's two fights in this episode. We get the one that we cliffhangered on last week, which Sunraku does end up getting the W, which kind of surprised me because the way the title of the episode was laid out, it kind of made it sound like both of them were going to get the jump on the other. Turned out this crab bot was just awesome. Then she makes her new one instantaneously, and they start the duel, and then they cut it off. So I imagine over time we'll learn what the outcome was. But either way, just fantastic stuff, and once again highlights just how good this author is at essentially designing video games. Like, yes, if you wanted to play a very customizable mecha-style video game, you could play the Armored Core series, and you'd get a lot of what you're seeing here. But the big thing is there's no VR that's as complex as this. And that's the big selling point to SLF, is how it feels like not only are the games well designed, and most importantly, you understand how they would feel so amazing if VR really was to this degree, right? And I mean, VR has advanced a decent amount, but still, like, you're not just laying in bed fully controlling an avatar like this. No, you're still pushing buttons using controllers and stuff. Like, yeah, you can move around, and honestly, yeah, like, you could go do demos and stuff where, like, you fall off a building and you're gonna think you're falling off a building. But it ain't a video game like SLF, right? Like, it's not a fully fleshed out RPG or anything. And then this author just continues to show, like, damn, what VR could be someday if given enough time. And it's a little moment, but these are the moments that really flesh out and I think highlight why this author gets video games so much. So we ended the last episode with them confused because ultimately he had these thrusters on. Apparently no one really uses them because ultimately it gives away your location, because even though you turn invisible, the animation for like the thrusters still shows. So you're not really invisible, so like there's no point. It's essentially wasting an inventory slot for something that people are still going to know where you are. Pretty much, we learned that he changed his legs. He framed it in such a way that he matched a singular animation frame to do this move. It's like comboing in a fighting video game, because essentially he waited for the rockets to hit at a very certain moment, he switched his legs over, and we see ultimately what ended up happening. But when they talked about how he switched inventories, I thought to myself, it's not that this can't work, but it does kind of come across as someone who doesn't play a lot of video games. Because often, you can't switch items unless they're already equipped, right? Like, if you're in the middle of a boss fight, if you pause, you're not usually able to switch out. Now, some video games do allow it, don't get it mistaken. But often when it comes to especially like a player versus player, the inventory you go into the match with is the inventory you're coming out with. But apparently, you know, certain items like the one he was equipping here, as we get confirmed in this episode, have the ability to switch off. So it's almost like equipping 2 in 1. And I like those little details because it goes a long way. And I love just how they ultimately detailed the fight. It was great. And the idea that everyone was getting salty that our boy's like, okay, I had my fun, back to my main game. Right then and there, you knew she was going to be tagging along to SLF, especially when you start casually dropping that there's mechas. And just the way they exchange information, this is what I really like too. Ultimately, the information she gave, I don't think is close enough to even be willing to give her information about the vault. Granted, she wouldn't even be able to get access to the vault anyway because, well, the key is a one-time thing that he has access to. But if she joins his party, you know, that could change. But either way, it is some good information about a questline that very seemingly is relating to this big fish in the sea. The thing is it's not enough that, like, more players probably have stumbled on something like that, but if we can find a true unique scenario through all this, then yeah, it's info that's definitely valuable. And I love how it's not even plot convenience. No one could argue that, oh, they're casually dropping plot convenience on how they found the next one. Think of Sunraku and how very early on into SLF, he casually stumbled upon that big wolf. Like, he just randomly stumbled upon it. Is it really insane to think a girl who maybe played it for one day to a few days might have casually stumbled in a unique scenario for a giant squid in the sea? It is completely believable, and I'm sure she's not the only one who's done that for other bosses, but it's all about progressing through all those quest lines. I mean, I'm sure there's players who just do boating and sailing and stuff and have been attacked by the big beast in the sea. So I actually like how they cover their tracks and nothing ever feels convenient. It's like, no, it just feels like people playing video games that you either want to play or you want to spectate because the games might be trash, but they're just entertaining to watch, right? But either way, some big revelations. We get the finale to the fight, which I very much enjoyed. We currently don't know who won in terms of, you know, win, loss, draw. But ultimately, I kind of like that at the same time. It's kind of like, okay, you know, maybe they'll touch upon it again, but also you can maybe headcanon what happens. To me, Sunraku probably lost, given that all of his cards were laid out on the table, and she had this beautifully designed new bot. Like, I doubt he beat her in that. I mean, that is her main game, so I wouldn't be surprised. But just casually now knowing that more people could have access to this village, and he could be interacting with other players now when he goes back to the rabbit village, is actually pretty crazy. Like, they really casually dropped that because no one can have access to a mule. Like, a mule's his unique NPC at this point. And the fact that her brother has a connection to another player, seemingly anyway, is pretty huge news. Great episode. This is remaining to be one of my favorite anime to talk about, watch, cover. It's just an absolute damn treat. I'm so excited. I think before this season wraps up, we're going to have one other unique boss fight. And, let's see if they can top the Weathermon fight. Let me know your thoughts and feelings down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new around here, of course, ring that bell. And like I mentioned, full live reactions over on Patreon. And hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shout out. So today we got David, Pseudo247, Luke Brownfield, Husava Itamis, Light Shadow, and we also have Devin Diego. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care, and you all have a good one.